Have you ever stopped to think about how a single idea, just one little thought, can zip across the entire planet in the blink of an eye? Today, we're going on a journey to trace that path. We're going to see how a message goes from a simple whisper to a global broadcast that can reach billions of people. And believe me, it's a story that pretty much defines our world.
So let's get right to it. How does that actually happen? How does one voice, one person's thought, manage to travel from their mind into the minds of millions all at once? That's the big question we're tackling. And you might be surprised to learn that the answer starts thousands and thousands of years ago.
You know, the need to share our stories is about as old as we are. If you rewind the clock tens of thousands of years, you'll find our earliest ancestors mixing up charcoal and ochre, pressing their handprints on cave walls, and drawing these incredible scenes. Now, these weren't just pretty pictures. They were messages. They were a way to pass on knowledge, to say, we were here.
Okay, now let's fast forward a bit. As we started building towns and cities, our methods got a little more sophisticated. The spoken word became, well, a system. All of a sudden, you have the town crier. This guy was basically a walking, talking newspaper, and his voice was the way an entire community got its news. For the very first time, communication was becoming a public service.
And now, well, now we've made this absolutely insane leap. We have satellites whipping around the planet, beaming messages from one side of the world to the other in an instant. They take that single voice and amplify it on a scale that's just, well, it's truly global. And that technological jump has completely changed everything about how we live.
But let's pause for a second. What are we really doing when we communicate? The word itself actually gives us a great clue. It comes from the Latin word communis, which means to make common. So the whole point of communication, whether it's a cave painting or a satellite signal, is to share something, an idea, a feeling, a fact, and to create a common ground, a shared understanding.
All right, first up, let's try to get our heads around the incredible scale of modern media. I mean, the word mass in mass communication, it's not an exaggeration at all. It represents this unbelievable web of connections happening every single second of every day. To put this in perspective, just look at India. There are over 70,000 registered newspapers there. And remember, that's just one type of media in just one country. When you start to add in TV, radio, and of course the internet, the amount of information flying around is just staggering.
So with all that noise, how does a single story from one of those sources actually cut through and start to spread? It turns out it's not as simple as you might think. People have been studying this for decades, trying to map out the journey of a message.
And a really brilliant, super simple way to think about this comes from a guy named Laswell. He said to understand any piece of communication, you just need to ask 5 basic questions. Who is sending the message? What are they actually saying? How are they sending it? Who are they trying to reach? And maybe the most important one, what happens when it actually gets there? What's the effect?
Now, for a really long time, the main idea was something called the hypodermic needle theory. That sounds a little dramatic, right? The theory was that the media was just this all-powerful force, and it could basically inject an idea straight into our brains, and that we, the audience, would just passively accept it and all react in the exact same way.
But pretty quickly, researchers realized, hang on, that's not how people work at all. Reality is way more complex. And that led to a new idea, the two-step flow theory. This model says that media messages don't just hit everyone all at once. Nope. First, they reach people who are already paying close attention. We call them opinion leaders.
And then, this is the crucial part, those opinion leaders take in the information, they chew on it, and then they pass it along to their own friends, their families, their social circles. So what does this all mean? It means the conversation you have with a trusted friend about something in the news is often way more powerful and influential than the original news report itself. Personal influence is king.
This all brings us to a very specific kind of communication, one with a really specific job: journalism. See, its mission isn't just to share stuff, but to play a fundamental role in how our society actually works.
To get what that role is, we've got to go back in time to the old European political setup. Power was traditionally split between 3 groups, or estates. You had the church, you had the state, or the monarchy, and you had the people. These were the formal pillars that held society up. But then, as the printing press started to take off, people realized a new, unofficial power player had entered the game. The press, journalism, became known as the Fourth Estate. And its job? Its job was to stand outside of those official power structures and act as a watchdog, to keep an eye on all the others and hold them accountable.
Mahatma Gandhi, who, by the way, ran 3 newspapers himself, so he knew what he was talking about, he absolutely nailed this idea. He said the one and only goal of journalism should be service.
Not making a profit, not getting famous, but a real commitment to serving the public and serving the truth.
And that ideal is guided by this core principle, which was famously put into words by an editor named C.P. Scott. Facts are sacred, comment is free. What that means is that facts are untouchable. They have to be checked and double-checked, and they belong to everyone. Your opinion, on the other hand, well, that's yours. But you have to be crystal clear about which is which.
Now, this mission sounds really noble, and it is, but it has never, ever been easy. All throughout history, the freedom to actually report the truth has been a constant fight. And to really see this struggle in action, we can look at the history of the press in India.
The history of the Indian press is just a perfect example of this constant battle. It kicks off way back in 1780 with this rebellious paper that challenged colonial rule. Then you see laws passed specifically to try and shut down local newspapers. Finally, in 1947, independence comes and freedom of speech is written into the Constitution. But the fight was far from over.
Because in 1975, a state of emergency was declared, and the press was hit with severe censorship. For 2 whole years, the government could literally tell newspapers what they were and were not allowed to publish. It is still one of the darkest moments for press freedom in India's democratic history, and it's this really stark reminder that this freedom is never, ever guaranteed.
So, okay, that's a lot of history, a lot of theories. Why does any of this matter to us today, right here, right now? Well, because the principles we've been talking about are more important than they have ever been.
Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister, called the press a vital organ of democracy. Just think about that metaphor, an organ. He wasn't saying it's a nice accessory to have. He was saying it's essential. It's like a heart or a lung. If you don't have a free, functioning press that's informing people and holding power in check, democracy itself just can't breathe.
And all of this leaves us with one final, massive question for our time. I mean, think about it. We are drowning in information from a million different places, but we are often starving for real, reliable understanding. In this world, the biggest challenge we all face is deciding who do you trust to help you find the truth.